Hello everybody, probably want to know what's going on in the shop today. Look at this tea table we're building. We built the jig yesterday, this jig here. Let's see, it spins the, if you watch, the jig spins. This bolt tightens and loosens, and this spins inside the jig like this. I think you can see that pretty good. You say, yeah, okay. It spins like this, and then this rotor cuts the dovetail in the leg while the leg spins. So you spin the leg to where it's centered, like there, for the bit. You run the bit through, and then you spin it again like this to the next slot. You run it through, and then you spin it again to the next slot, and you run it through. And how the rotor works is the rotor fits in there like this. And the rotor slides back and forth like that to a stop. It stops back here. It stops it from going any further ahead. And it cuts the bit. Now, as you can see, this is the second one I've built. The one I built, the first one I built, didn't work properly. And what you can see is I put nylon runners in this one for smoother operation. And if you watch, you can see that the rotor slides much smoother now, back and forth in the slide. I can slide it with one hand. Second modification that I made was I made a bigger faceplate to accommodate a bigger, stronger rotor. This is a 14 amp rotor, and I was trying to rotor it out with a 9 amp rotor. So this is a much stronger rotor, and you can see how much nice and smoother it slides. I'm going to do it in one pass. So I'm pretty sure this time I'm going to get the proper job and get a nice job on these dovetails on the next spindle that I make. So I think I got this solved. Now what we're doing over here is we're making the table legs and the table leg jigs and templates. This is a table leg template that I made this morning. It's ready to go. It's the right size and shape for the table leg. Let me see if I got it in film camera. There we go. Yeah, this is the table leg template. This is the exact right size. I traced it with carbon paper from the plan. It goes on the table like that, on the spindle. And what this is a taper jig. I've been working on it this morning. This taper jig, how it works is the leg fits down inside the jig, and the jig holds the leg in place. See? Leg goes like that inside the jig. Jig holds it in place, and then it runs through the planer. And by raising this end of the leg up ever so slightly like that, let me get it in the film, by raising the leg up in the jig ever so slightly like that, what the planer does is it shaves off just the leg, not the jig. It shaves off that leg that's sticking up like that. See, I'll make the leg stick up like that out of the jig. When it runs through the planer, it'll shave this end of the leg, making a slight taper. But a very smooth taper that doesn't even need sanding hardly. It's ready for stain and paint. It'll be so smooth. So that'll speed up making this taper in the leg. And these tables look an awful lot nicer if the legs are tapered. What I mean by tapered is, instead of this end of the leg being the same thickness as this end of the leg, there's a very slightly thinner. The leg comes down to a very slightly thinner point down here at the bottom. So that's what this jig's for, is to make that taper the legs. So we got these two jigs made. I'm going to test this jig right now. I'm going to see how it functions. So that's the next step. Okay, we tried the taper jig, and it does run through the planer rather nicely. And as you can see, the planer shaved off this right here on this side. Shaved it off as it went through the planer, through the taper jig. But then I noticed a problem is I can't reverse this in the taper jig. I can't do this side of the leg, so I'm going to have to make another taper jig that's the opposing leg, a left and a right taper jig. So I'm going to have to make two. So I better get to work on making another one of these taper jigs. because I can see they're going to work. Just a matter of putting things. In this case, I put a bit of sandpaper underneath as a shim. It's just a matter of putting the shim on this end, making shims for this end of the taper jig. So I'll make those shims, and that should make a nice taper in the legs. So when I make both taper jigs, the two taper jigs, I should say. Okay, to see what we have done now is I've made another jig. I made this jig earlier, and now I've made another taper jig, a left and a right. I hope they're not, yeah, okay, left and right. So you see, you cut, let me get it over here in the camera. You cut this side so, and then you swing it over here and cut this side like so. So this side cut here, and then you swing it over here and cut this side. Of course, the real table legs will fit in there a little bit better because they're smaller. They're slightly smaller. This is a little bit bigger. See, and now what I've done is I've made to go in these jigs, I've made the shim. The 1/8 inch shim here fits in here in the tip, and that gives you the taper. When this sits on top, it makes it higher so that the planer shaves it off and gives you your taper. And then you swing it over on this side, and this side's higher, and the planer shaves it off and gives you your taper. So we're going to give them a shot. We're going to see what sort of a taper we get right now. Okay, what we have, we've tested the two now. I've ran them through the planer, and I've got a perfectly tapered leg. This is cabinet maker's plywood, so it's a veneer and it's rather flaky stuff. But still, it did a pretty good job. It took a few little nips off, but it won't do that with hardwood. And you can see it's got just a nice taper. 1/8 of an inch on either side taper. So it's tapered it down. Tapered the leg automatically. So these two jigs are working good, and that's completed. Now I can go on to, and I've got the templates made for the legs. So now it's on to the next step.